Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. And I just want to say right off the bat, hello in the chat to Leia Rose. Thanks for joining us. She says hello to both of us. Is Leia Rose still your number one fan, Phil McCracken?
When you have a fan like Leia Rose, you don't need other fans. That's enough.
Well, there you go. All right, guys. So welcome back to part 2 of our discussion into the extended edition of Return of the King. And again, for those that are new to these sort of streams, we've been going through the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy, the extended editions, and breaking them down scene by scene and seeing what is accurate to the book. So this is, of course, part 2 of Return of the King. If you want to see our thoughts on the first 2 books, go back and check out those. So when we last left off where Gandalf had just left for Minas Tirith with Pippin, leaving, of course, Merry, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli behind with Theoden. And the next scene that we see from that is Arwen traveling with a host of elves from Rivendell to go and make their way to the harbor where the ship will take her to the Undying Lands. And during their travels, she sees a vision of an older Aragorn with what she believes is their son. And this causes her to turn around and go back. So break that one down for me, Phil. Is that accurate? And what's that about?
Okay. In the book, doesn't happen in the same way as the movie. Let's just say, book-wise, it was always intended that she was going to stay on Middle Earth because of Aragorn. All right? Mm-hmm. It's a done deal. In the book, they already committed to each other. All right? The only thing that they need done is him to become king. All right. Now, this is similar to what happens with Beren and Luthien. Mm-hmm. In order for Beren to marry Luthien, he had to go get a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth. That's all he was required to do. That was supposed to be an more impossible task than what Aragorn got going trying to become king. But it's a mirror image of the same task, deed, or whatever you want to call it, that Aragorn has to do. Okay. So in the book, though, her father, Elrond, wants her to go to Middle-earth. She has no intentions of going to Middle-earth. Long as Aragorn's alive and breathing, there's always a chance that he can become king.
Correct.
Okay. Movie-wise, I can see why they did what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can understand it because guess what? Between the last time you see Arwen and now, there's nothing there. You have a great thing where's she at? What's she doing? So now you got at least something. You have to put something in there because it's like, it's a long time. If you're doing, even if you're counting the minutes from her last scene in the Two Towers to that scene in The Lord of the Ring, that's a long gap.
It is.
So you have to do something. So I could see why they did it that way. It's why it's invented. It's not bad. Okay. Again, there's no movie that's going to be 100% to the book. Okay.
Of course.
And this is a circumstance where they have to do something with Erwin's character. So this is it. And it makes sense too, you know. So I'm not overly disappointed, but It's not really in there, but I can understand it, and I could see something happening, even if it's not in the book, similar to what did happen in the movie. So,
Right.
but I'm giving you her mindset. She's determined to be with Aragon. The only thing holding him up is that her father had made Aragon promise that the only way they get married is if he becomes king. And the only
Mm-hmm.
way to do that is Sauron has to be gone. So,
Correct.
yeah. But overall, about this part, I have no problems with it. I think it's good. I do like that she gets to see a vision. Uh, I take that as the powers that be from Valinor are showing her that glimpse. And I like the comment when she goes back to her dad and confronts him and says, you know, you didn't tell
Well,
everything with your foresight.
real quick on that scene, of course, she does go and do that,
Mhm.
and of course urges Elrond to remake the sword Narsil into Anduril, which that's a whole other topic we'll get into later. But by the way, hello to DJ Ronnie G, and say hello to your turtles for me.
Nerd.
But the big thing that we learned from this scene is that after this, Arwen just collapses into a chair and drops a book, and we come to find out that Arwen is dying. And this just
Not
seemingly
in the sense we have to be careful when we say that. Not in the sense that as a human in this world is dying. She is fading.
okay.
Let's just say she's becoming, even though even if she stays on Middle Earth, she is going to die, fade away.
Mm-hmm.
But that could take hundreds, if not close to hundred up with 300-400 years before that will happen. We
Right.
know in the book in the book, Aragon lives practically what another 100 years after the Lord of the Rings and
Something like
books.
that.
So she fades away right afterwards. Not soon, not too long of that. So it isn't like she doesn't. She has a short elf life, but a long human life. Remember, she gets to choose.
Mm-hmm.
That's the important thing. Everyone in Elrond's family, going back to him and his brother, get to choose their fate. Uh, their father chose to be a elf rather than have the human fate. His brother chose to have the human fate rather than the elf. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he had 500 years of life. That's a long time for a human, you know.
Right.
Uh, Now, Arwen and her brothers, the two twin brothers, will have a choice to make. And their choice is, do they take the fate of a human or they get to choose the fate of an elf?
And if I'm not mistaken, her two brothers chose the life of an elf, basically.
They've never been confirmed or denied what their fate is. We know
Okay.
Elrond had already chosen. His wife was an elf, so she already had gone to Valinor.
Mm-hmm.
But Arwen does choose the life of a mortal. So she never can go to Valinor. She'll have a pretty long life as a human in elf form
Mm-hmm.
on Middle Earth. But when she dies, and she does die, she will have the fate of a human and leave this earth, where elf's fate is to go to Valinor. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, she made the choice practically when she told uh Aragon, and this was all the way back in Rivendell in the Two Towers in the book, where she
Mm-hmm.
promised that she would marry him and have the fate of a human.
Right.
So, like I said, pretty much what Peter Jackson did, he took it from there, embellished it a little bit more, and put it where it was needed in the Lord of the Rings, because again, we don't have many scenes with Arwen, and this gives her a scene
Yeah,
and
and real
sometimes
quick,
her own story.
I gotta bring this up too. That DJ Ronnie G says that scene confused me. I tend to agree with that because the way that the movie portrays it, if you do not have that extra background that you're talking about, Phil, it does indeed look just at face value that Arwen is indeed dying.
Well, like I said, all the elves that don't leave, depending on what point in time,
Hmm.
when they feel the call, let's just call it the call. If they don't answer the call and they stay in Middle Earth, they will gradually fade and die. I mean, this is different than the first age where some elves didn't answer the call the first time to go to Valinor, and they
Hmm.
were fine to stay in Middle Earth, and nothing was going to happen to them. If they died a unfortunate death in Middle Earth, they would be reborn over in Valinor at some point. But after the reprieve, after they defeated Morgoth, and they told the elves, all the elves, not just the Noldor, all the elves come back. And if you didn't even come back, didn't come the first time, all the elves to come to Valinor. Now, when they answer the call, it's all different points in time. You have to remember, even in the book, Gladriel's husband, unlike the movie, does not leave Middle Earth when she leaves.
Right.
He stays in Middle Earth. He doesn't leave to much later. So when you see him in the movie and you see him with Gandalf and Gladriel, no, he stays in Middle Earth for a little while longer. His time is not ready to go. So in the movie, which you see in this scene, and she refuses to go and she turns back. That was her choice to make. And that's where she made the choice. She's not going to have the fate of an elf. She's going to have the fate of a human. And she clearly states there's no boat to bring me hence.
Hmm.
Because she made the choice. Once the choice is made, Elrond can't do anything. So he has no choice but to make sure that his daughter to be happy. In order for his daughter to be happy, Aragorn's got to become king and he's got to defeat Sauron. So he's got to do everything in his power. And if that means, hey, I'm going to help reforge the sword, that's going to help him. So be it, you know. But, you know, he's made that choice. But in the book, that choice has already been made way before, you know. So,
Okay.
yeah. It's just that they instead of like at the time when it was made, the choice is pretty much made right before Aragon leaves to join the Fellowship to go and leave Rivendell and head out. That choice is
Okay.
that's when it was made in a book. Okay, that's how early it is. Now, if he would have done it that way, okay, just hypothetically, and done it that way, how much are we going to see Arwen in this movie in Return of the King?
Not much at all.
So I can understand why he did it the way he did it. This is one change I can understand.
Hmm.
So
So then, going back to it though, after this, we do indeed see Elrond reforge the sword. Now, we've already talked about it. We talked about it in the Fellowship review, but we'll go ahead and just briefly touch on it here. I know that this is a massive, massive change from the book because Aragorn was basically supposed to have Narsil slash Anduril from the beginning,
he
correct?
was to have the hilt, not the whole blade, not the broken pieces, not the tip, only the broken hilt. Okay, that's what he kept on him. Now in the Baskin Robbins the animated movie, the beginning, the first one, you see the character Aragon fighting with the sword, even though it's a broken hilt.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, if you notice in the Return of the King of the animated one, you don't see him use that sword. So I think they realized, okay, this doesn't make any sense. He's fighting with a broken sword. As far as I know, Tolkien doesn't say that he fights with it, other than he does possess the hilt with the broken sword. How he gets that back to where the elves can fix it, either that gets fixed right before his coronation to become king. But I will grant Peter Jackson this second thing. It makes more sense in the way Peter Jackson did it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes more sense. Look, Tolkien's a mastermind. His son's a mastermind, story weaver. But this part here with the sword makes more sense in the movie than it does book-wise.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't make any sense to fight with a broken hilt.
Right.
You know,
And I do got to say, I know it is not Anduril, but personally, I do like the look of Aragorn's not Anduril sword that he carries in this movie. In fact, I want a replica of that sword, but that's neither here nor there. But anyways, after this, we see Gandalf and Pippin riding, of course, still to Minas Tirith, and they eventually arrive, and they go all the way up to the top of the citadel, where, of course, I nearly called him Peregrine. Pippin sees the tree that he had in the vision, the white tree of Gondor. And it's explained that ever since the line of kings ended, the tree withered and died, and it would only bloom again when the kingship is restored. So, can you explain that?
okay, that's movie. That's movie. That
Okay.
tree will not bloom again. Okay. Book, movie. Book, movie, it blooms again. Book, it doesn't bloom again. After Aragon becomes king, Gandalf takes him up to a high mountain that's behind Minas Tirith and magically finds a sapling of the white tree to replace it and regrow. Now, either something magical happened and that seed managed to go up in the air, up into the mountain, or at some point, but people speculate, Gandalf took a sapling of the tree and planted it up there for the future to when the day Aragon becomes king, so he can have that white tree. That white tree goes all the way back to Numenor, and it was a gift to Elros by the elves in Valinor.
Okay.
They came over by the ship, they visited Numenor, and they gave Elros a sapling of the white tree. Now, that white tree is supposed to be a sapling from another tree, all the way going back to the two trees of light that Morgoth and Sheogoth destroyed.
Okay.
So that's a sapling. That's how far this tree has come. And that tree was originally the sapling was brought to Numenor. One night it was I'm trying to think of his name. The guy who cut the ring off Sauron's hand. What's his name?
It's Isildur.
Isildur snuck one night to the king's tree to get a sapling. Got the sapling, and the guards wounded him. He
Okay.
got wounded. very badly for that sapling. And when Numenor got destroyed and the boats went back to Middle Earth, him and his brother went to what is now Gondor, and he originally planted the tree in Isgirth, I can't say that, the city next to Minas Tirith.
Osgiliath.
There you go. They planted it there. Well, it almost got destroyed, but thankfully they took a sapling from it and they brought it from there over to Minas Tirith. And that's where it's been planted and lived. And it didn't die, let's just say, lost its ability, I guess, or whatever power it had or whatever it was to cause it to grow.
Yeah.
When the last king, which isn't Isildur, the last king of Gondor went to go fight the Witch King at Minas Morgulth, and it was never heard from again.
Okay.
That's when that and when the line of king was broken there, and it for Gondor, not for the northern kingdom of Arnor, that was not broken yet. And when that king got captured and whatever happened, killed or whatever, no one knows what happened to him.
Real quick, your own theory. What do you think happened?
I think he was captured, tortured, and eventually killed.
Okay.
Okay. Now for Arnor, the last king, official king, died after Fornos got destroyed, and he went north, and the boats for Gondor had come, but it was a little late, and the king drowned on a boat that was destroyed by an iceberg, kind of similar to the Titanic. And hence, his son never took the title as king, but called himself the chieftain of the Dunedain because there wasn't enough people left.
Right.
Up there in the Northern Kingdom. So that's where the line of the kings end, but officially the line didn't die out. The line still existed. It's just they never were kings. They were calling them chieftain. And that goes straight through to Aragorn. He was technically the chief of the Dunedain. So don't mean to get us too far off, but that's the story.
No, that's fine. That is perfectly fine.
That is the story of that. So that sapling of the white tree has a history from Isgirth all the way to Numenor and all the way back to Valinor. So.
Okay. So after this, of course, Gandalf is explicit in his instructions. Don't speak about Boromir. Don't speak about Frodo and the Ring. Don't speak about Aragorn. In fact, just don't talk at all. And so they go in and they see Denethor sitting in his chair, which I gotta say, I liked this detail. I don't know if this was book or movie, but there's just a little detail in the scene that I really liked. The chair that Denethor was sitting in was at the base of the throne. It wasn't the throne itself.
Because he's a steward.
Yes.
That chair that you see high up is for the king. And even though Gondor does not have a king, the steward is in charge until there is a king. And it normally in royalty, when you have a kingdom, you have a chancellor or you have a steward.
Yes.
And when they assemble, the king is at the highest or the queen is at the highest point. Okay. And that's why you always see their throne and the chairs always sit up high. Normally, a steward or the chancellor in a ceremonial place like that is at it is at a high point, but is underneath the king or the queen.
Okay.
So, in some places, if you go in Europe, you will see.
So real quick, would you say that it would serve almost as like the same role as perhaps the prime minister of, say, modern day England?
Yeah, prime minister, chancellor. You know, when you have royalty, most nowadays royalty are figureheads, but
Yes.
the chancellor or the prime minister still have to answer to the royal sovereign because it's their kingdom.
Yes.
So this is no different. This is only in a time where the king has to make decisions, and his chancellor, his prime minister, has to be there. And at some point, the king will say, "Well, I'm leaving it up to the prime minister and the chancellor." He walks away, and the chancellor's still there holding court.
Okay.
But he still has to have a place of authority. And normally, that place of authority, like I said, not all places have the same setup, but most places, the king is up high, the chancellor or prime minister or steward is at a seat or chair beneath the king or queen, and then you have the rest of the royal court and assembly of people in the hall. So
Okay.
what you see there is an accurate description. Not all royalty and all countries do it the same way, but in that particular instance, that's fine. That's
Right.
pretty accurate.
And again, like I said, just the fact that they included that detail, I thought was really cool.
What I guess they were trying to do is just like what was intended to show you he has authority, but he doesn't have the ultimate authority.
Right.
He's not a king. He's only a steward.
Or perhaps, and I'm gonna take a bit of a risk with this particular analogy. Who truly has the ultimate authority? God or the Pope in Catholicism?
God has authority.
Mm-hmm.
But who gave him that authority?
God gave the Pope authority in the Catholic belief. Am I correct?
It's in your Bible too.
Mm-hmm.
When if you're going by religious standpoint, Jesus says, "Who am I?" Right? And everybody was coming up with answers, and then Peter says, "You are the Christ." And he
Yes.
says, "Blessed are you, Peter, because only that was revealed to you by your Father in heaven. And I will tell you that you are the rock, and upon that rock I will build my church." And he's always referred to as the Prince of Apostles. No other apostle has that authority. Now, later
Okay.
on, a couple of verses later, he does give similar authority to other apostles, but Peter is first.
Okay.
Peter is first. And that authority, if you remember the words out of Christ's mouth, wasn't given to him by Christ. That was given to him by God the Father, not God the Son, God the Father.
Okay.
So, when you ever get a chance, you read in your own Bible, reread that, take it slow, and you'll see what I said.
Okay.
Okay.
So, getting back to the story, Denethor is sitting there in his chair, and he is just completely overcome with grief. And he's holding the two halves of Boromir's horn, and he looks at Gandalf and is like, "You want to explain this to me, buddy?" And Pippin, like, Pippin does, speaks up when he's not supposed to and basically explains to Denethor, Boromir was killed trying to protect me and Mary. And at first, Denethor's kind of taken aback by this. He's like, how did Boromir die and you survived? Because Boromir is like one of the mightiest of men. But Pippin says even the mightiest man can be struck down by an arrow, and Boromir was struck by many. And in that moment, Pippin decides to offer his services to Denethor as, I guess you could say, sort of repayment for Boromir saving his life. Is that about accurate?
Well, here's differences that we have, and one part will make sense. If you
Okay.
didn't see the extended version where Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli put the body of Boromir in the boat,
Yes.
and he sends the boat downriver, which isn't that far because there's the Great Fall.
Mhm.
All right.
I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. They show this in
Now,
the
if
Two
you don't
Towers
see
movie.
them, if you don't see this, so in the theatrical release, this doesn't make any sense.
Uh-huh.
Well, when it goes down the waterfall, which is a long drop, his body might got washed out to sea, or probably stuck in the rocks there, or under the water, or whatever. But his horn is what floats downriver, and the Rangers of the South, the Rangers of Ethereum, are the
Which
ones who
Faramir is
find.
in charge of, right?
Yeah, they're the ones that find the horn. Now, when that horn's brought back to Denethor, Boromir is not going to go anywhere without that horn.
Right.
Okay. And again, I spoke about the horn symbolizing, if you know real history about what was his name? Roland and Charles Montel, the guy who defeated the Arabs, the Muslims that were trying to invade France in the 5th century.
Okay.
Roland was the rear guard as they were leaving Spain, Muslim Spain at the time, and they attacked them from the rear, and he blows his horn to signal that he's under attack. But the way the valley is and how long of a line to turn everybody around, it's almost impossible. So
Okay.
once they make it back to where he was at, Roland was already killed. And
Okay.
that horn is a symbolization of Roland, which Tolkien used to put there with Boromir. So as he's holding the thing, and you notice it's cleaved in two. Yeah, he's asking, he wants information. Now, through all this, it's not a secret. Denethor does not get along with Gandalf
No.
because Gandalf treated not
Faramir?
Boromir, Faramir, like it was like a pupil. You know, he was teaching him,
Right. In
right?
fact, there's a scene
Yeah, when he
later in the
calls him
movie,
the
the
wizard's
wizard's
pupil.
pupil.
Yes,
Yes.
and that's part of the reason why Denethor does not trust Faramir.
Uh-huh.
That, and because he blames him because his wife, their mother, dies not too long after he is born, and he resents him. Okay.
Wow.
Now, Boromir and Faramir have a good relationship, and anything he does pretty decent. Is he a warrior on the scale as Boromir? No. Is he a good warrior? Yes. Let's say if you were to rate him, you would rate Boromir maybe an A. Well,
Mhm.
he's definitely a B, which isn't bad. You know, he's
Okay.
better than normal. But there in the book, he has a little resentment there. Not only that, but after he gets the horn, he kind of resents that, which you see in the extended version. Faramir offered to go to Rivendell. So Boromir didn't have to go, and he could stay to help defend Gondor. But Denethor didn't want that because he wanted the ring. And he knew if he sent Faramir, chances are even if he was sent, let's just hypothetically sent, he was there and he goes with the fellowship,
Yeah.
Faramir ain't trying to take that ring. He
No.
wouldn't want, just like what he did there, he doesn't want nothing to do with that ring.
Mm-hmm.
He already understands it. He might have questioned it. It might have had a little temptation, but pretty much he didn't want nothing to do with that ring. That ring is nothing for them. So there was a little maybe second guessing on Denethor's part there. But you notice that again, the people he's blaming is Faramir and Gandalf. Doesn't blame Pippin.
Yeah.
He blames them too, because he has this resentment. And that's in part the Palantir, as even though it's not a ring, play with this power too much,
Mm-hmm.
and it will warp you.
Yeah,
Not only
and
that, it doesn't.
referencing the later scene when Denethor and Faramir are talking. Denethor outright said it was supposed to come here to be kept in the vaults, never to be used except under the greatest need. But here's the thing that I wonder. Even if it wasn't actively being used, could the mere presence of the ring in Minas Tirith and the fact that Denethor knows it's there, could that have been enough to warp him and tempt him?
If the Palantir, and he was using that Palantir for a long time, granted he had somewhat will to resist it. Palantir, even from the beginning, look, even the kings of Numenor and the people entrusted with them, there's only like maybe emergencies when you would use the Palantir. And even then, under extreme circumstances, it's not supposed to be something, even if all are in the hands of good people.
Okay.
You can't use it that much. It's just too powerful for a person.
Right.
And it only shows you a glimpse. In his instance, he sees a glimpse of the future and he sees the black ships, the Corsairs coming up the river towards Minas Tirith.
Okay.
Now, he automatically presumes they're coming for aid Sauron. He doesn't know who's on the ships. He don't know what they're representing, but all he knows that he keeps saying it's the doom. It's the doom. It'd be like you taking a picture of an accident 10 years in the future, but you don't know what intersection, what persons are driving, none of that, but you see the accident in the future. There's not much you can do really with that information, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is what the Palantir does. It gives you a glimpse. Now you can contact people. Like you see Saruman talking to Sauron. Yes, you can. They were communicating with it. That's another purpose of it. But that's not what Denethor. Who's Denethor contacting? Saruman ain't talking to him. Sauron definitely ain't talking to him, but he knows he's using it and does use a little evil influence to help corrupt them. But he's using it to look in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he's only getting fragments. He's not getting, this is what's going to happen. This is definitely going kind of like Gladriel's water basin without her wisdom to tell you what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. So he's already, when Gandalf's there, where's Gondor's armies?
They're all basically stood down.
They're spread out and not even all assembled. He hasn't called other regions of Gondor to come to his aid.
Yeah.
He has done nothing because he already seen, according to his mind, he's seen the future. We're doomed, and he doesn't care. His big hope was his son getting the ring and bringing the ring to him. And even if that ring stood in a vault and it didn't have any power to do anything to him, he would be tempted to put that ring on. It's a given.
And at that point, if he did,
that's it. You're done.
Game over.
There you go. So if he had gotten the ring and isn't staying in the vault, it wouldn't be staying on the vault.
So anyways, with that, though, basically, we also learn that apparently through this Palantir, although he doesn't exactly say it, he says, quote, "Word has reached my ears of this Aragorn, son of Arathorn," and he outright refuses to acknowledge that Aragorn is the true heir. And Gandalf, rightfully puts him in his place. You don't have the right to deny the king. But of course, Denethor doesn't take that well, and basically says Gondor is mine.
Well, put it to you this way, and just hypothetically, okay? I'm not going to use anybody's, but just hypothetically. We have a president and a vice president, okay? President gets sick. He's going to be incapacitated. So he says, okay, until I am well enough to come back to doing my job, the vice president's going to step in and take my place until I'm well enough. Okay?
Right.
Vice president goes in
Time
there.
out real quick. Haven't we actually had times like that in history?
You had it with Reagan when he got shot, and George Bush took control. Not that he took control, but he had to take control because first the president was shot, and it was going to be at least 2 or 3 weeks even after the operation before he'd be in any condition to do the job as president. Now, I'm pretty sure he was informed what was going on, but in the meantime, Vice President Bush was doing the work.
Right.
Okay. Well, this is not too far of a different, even though it is different, King, Stuart, and all that. But that's the best thing that people would understand. Once the president's well enough to take control and, be back to being president, the vice president needs to step back. Well, Denethor does not want to step back. And you have to remember the comment even by Boromir when he was in Rivendell. What was the comment? Gondor has no king. Gondor needs no king.
Yes.
Yes. And the reason being, who's the power and control? His dad and him.
Exactly.
And don't forget, that power stretches a little bit more, even though I think it would be a little more lenient to Aragorn. Prince of the Prince of, I forget his name. He's not in the movie, but he's in the book. Prince of Dorant, the half elf, half human.
Not a clue who that is.
That is Boromir and Faramir's uncle.
All
right. You have to remember, I told you this before in a previous video, that their mother come from further west of Gondor, and it was settled by humans and elves.
Yes.
So Boromir and Faramir have elfish blood.
Okay.
Now in the book, when Minas Tirith comes under attack, their uncle comes with the knights, and they have swans. That's the emblem on them. And he comes with 500 knights and a couple hundred regular foot soldiers.
Right.
And he comes there during the fight for the Pounder Fields. So, yeah. But getting back to that's the power struggle there. His uncle would have probably leaned more towards Aragorn because, just like Gandalf said, he is the heir. Even when the king disappeared, you have to remember why the Stuarts got charged. Was when that king went to go fight the Witch King and no one heard anything. No one knows anything. So the Stuarts are in charge. That's the only people to be in charge. And that's hundreds and hundreds of years of the Stuarts being in charge.
And I would imagine that there is a certain degree of complacency mixed with pride that kicks in of, oh yeah, I'm the steward, I'm in charge.
Now the steward has the power. There is no king, but it's like Gandalf says, they don't have the authority to stop a king. The only thing that's required is that he is he of the bloodline of the kings. Well, Aragorn is not so much of Isildur, but through his through Arnor. But he does have the blood of both the Arnor and Gondor. So he's the perfect person to be heir to the king. You know,
So then after this, hold on, I'm trying to remember the order of events here. Here's where this is probably the messiest movie to go through because there's a bunch of things happening at the same time. Crap, I have completely lost my place here.
You're talking about when Pippin was sworn to service to Denethor.
Yes. So okay. We'll go with this scene here. It's later that night, and we see Gandalf and Pippin are kind of getting ready for bed for the night. Pippin's looking over his new gear that he's going to be as a soldier of Gondor. And we get basically Gandalf pretty much laying out how things are right now. Quote, the deep breath before the plunge. And I gotta say, of all of the scenes in these movies, this one is a strong contender for my favorites because it truly is like the deep breath before the plunge. This scene right here, Gandalf laying things out as they are, laying out the fact that Sauron has been sending this basically black cloud of smoke toward Minas Tirith in preparation for his army to march, because orcs don't like sunlight. He mentions the Witch King, which we see the Witch King get armored up in that cool mask. And we also see that during this time, and I know we skipped something here, we see that Frodo and Sam have finally made it to Minas Morgul. And I gotta say, I really, really like the design of Minas Morgul from the outside. Just the green lighting on everything, and those two statues.
It's identical to Minas Tirith in a way, other than the green glow, which is supposed to represent evil magic. But
Right?
it is Minas Morgul is a copy and paste of Minas Tirith, because that used to be under Gondor, and the Witch King with Mordor helped conquer it, and that's where the last king went to go fight the Witch King. So yeah, I think the green light is supposed to represent just the evil form of magic, or the power of the Witch King and whatever evil resides there. So, but if you notice, even the white, they still can't put the darkness doesn't over. If you look at like the of the Tower of Sauron, Baldur, you see it's dark, foreboding. It's almost black.
Yes.
Right? You see Minas Tirith, it's pure white, which you would speculate shining white. But when you see Minas Morgul, you see the green, but you can still see the whiteness of Minas Morgul. It's like the green has it captured, but it's hasn't drawn the goodness of whatever had reside there. When you look at that scene again, look at it. You can still see the white in the tower. You can still see the white in the walls. But it has that greenish glow to it.
Right.
A natural glow.
So real quick, I do want to backtrack a little bit because there's a scene that happens just before this with Frodo, Sam, and Gollum that I just remembered. I wasn't sure where to slot it in, so we're going to slot it in here. it's two scenes kind of attached to each other. The first one, they're walking through, I guess, what's left of Athelion before they get to Minas Morgul, and Frodo just stops and looks at Sam and basically says, I get this feeling that I'm not going to make it back home. And of course, Sam says, oh, don't think like that. You're going to make it home, being encouraging. And then that transitions into another scene where they see this giant statue of a king that had its head broken off by some form of huge boulder, I'm guessing from the forces of Mordor. So what's going on here?
Well, Gondor is a lot bigger than what you see on the map. Most of it at one time was right up against, if not including some parts of what's now Mordor, after Sauron's first defeat. So as Gondor's power waned and Mordor's power grew, and especially Sauron's return, and again, this takes hundreds of years. This doesn't happen in a day. They gradually start taking the land back. In a way. And, there's a statue that Gondor put there. And of course, they don't like the statue. So they hack its head off and put a giant rock on there and ridicule. Right. That's what it is, to ridicule. And Sam, the interesting thing is when Sam sees the head, he goes, look, it got its crown back. The flowers are kind of like where his crown is. So reassuring, like, okay, this statue of the king can have its flowers as his crown back. And we got a little chance here. Hope, you'd be surprised what things can give people hope. And right there for Sam, seeing that statue head, and seeing the flowers in the shape of a crown on his head, was important enough to point it out and reassure him. Because Mordor is not a pretty place to go to.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
Nope. So, and the interesting thing is, as you're going through this, going through the scene and the story part, this is the last time you see Smeagol being somewhat friendly. And particularly when Frodo starts to walk towards Fields of Power and drawing towards Minas Morgul.
Yes. Smeagol helps Sam save him from that.
And bring him back, because as soon as them doors open, you don't want to see what's coming out, and definitely ain't going to be nice seeing a little hobbit there. So that's the last time in these movies that you see Smeagol being somewhat nice.
Exactly, because from here on out, he really starts to show his true colors.
Smeagol's gone, Gollum's back.
So during all of this, we see this huge rush of green energy rise up from the tower. I guess it's like the signal to go. And then we see the Witch King riding his beast, perching, and he starts taking off. And it's really, I like this detail too, of when the Witch King does his ring wraith shriek. He gets the usual effect of Frodo and Sam covering their ears in fear, but an extra effect on Frodo, because he starts feeling the wound that the Witch King caused him in the shoulder way back at Weathertop.
That is accurate with the book. I forget the name of the beast that they ride.
I believe they're just called fell beasts.
Whatever they're called. When they scream like that, that's not coming from the Nazgul or the Witch King. That's coming from the creatures they ride. It doesn't matter how strong you are or how good your will. That screech, it causes people, it's like it sends fear.
Yes.
So the only way I can compare it to is sometimes uh during wars, especially in the past,
Mm-hmm.
they might beat on drums, they might shout, use trumpets. That's enough to unnerve a person. Okay. So if you're on the walls defending a city and a barbaric horde is out there in the thousands and you hear shouting, screaming, pounding of drums and blowing of horns, it's
Mm-hmm.
unsettling.
Again, go back to the scene in Moria when the drums start beating.
Yeah. And that's psychological. Well, hearing that even without the power of their screech of them beast causing you to fear, just imagine without that power, just to hear it, it's enough to just hearing it is enough to forget the magical power that it has to make you run in fear.
Yeah.
When you see them doing that, especially when they're leaving Iskir to get to back to Minas Tirith, everybody the reaction is to cover your ears, to hide. You're not worrying about fighting. You're
Exactly.
not you see that scene, they're not worrying about fighting. Only thing they're worrying about is getting away.
Yes.
You know.
Which I gotta mention something just real quick. Virginia just messaged me and said that the fell beast screeching is basically the same thing as what the Sardaukar chants are in the new Dune movies, just terrifying to her.
Mm.
Which I have that right here. I'll just
Throughout all ages,
here.
yeah, and doesn't matter what year, generation, or what war.
I didn't play that again. It's set on looping. That's what it is. Okay, never mind.
But yeah, that the whole purpose of music and drums and trumpets in a military isn't to make good music. It's supposed to intimidate. And a drummer boy,
Mm-hmm.
when up until last 100 years, a drummer boy would march with soldiers, and they would follow the drum. All right.
And occasionally may or may not appear at the birth of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. But you'll hear drum, sometimes in battle, the only thing they could go by is by the drummer boy drumming the commands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But also, if they're trying to rally, if they've been driven off and they're in retreat, a drummer boy would stand up, play the drum to try to get and play something to rally the troops.
Yeah.
You get a bunch of them, like I say, if they're laying siege to a town or a city, there you go. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing they do is play music. The Fall of Jericho, when they're marching around
Yeah, that
Jericho.
was playing horns and then shouting after they marched around it 7 times.
There you go. It's all about intimidation. If
And
you
some
can
of this
intimidate,
some of this just real quick survives even today because in the limited experience that I have with marching bands, it's oftentimes drum beats that signify the commands to either halt or move forward.
that comes at the turn of the century, Napoleonic age of fighting.
Yep.
You had every regiment you pretty much had a drummer boy. you know, and that drummer boy can get killed just as much as any soldier in the line. But his job is to play the drum, issue the commands. Like I said, in a heat of battle, you can't hear much, but you can hear the drums. So the only thing is, in the confusion of battle, there's another regiment near you, and that drummer boy's doing the command to go forward, and your
Mhm.
drummer boy is doing the command to go retreat. It's all depending on who you're hearing the loudest at the time, which way you go.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, I mean that's the whole point, you know. But like I said, the beast, it's said by Tolkien, has the power. There's a power when it screeches like that. Not only the sound is already going to make you scared, but there's a magical fear in it that calls people to flee in fear.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it affects elves the same way or dwarves, but I know I can only speak for the men part. You can always see the men are always the first thing they want to do is scatter.
Yes.
You know, I'm not sure about elves if it affects elves the same way or dwarves the same way. I don't think so.
I want to say of anyone, it would affect elves probably the least, if at all. But I'm sure they're still getting some form of effect from it.
Well, if you're sitting there and you're seeing a whole horde and you're just like a limited small number, it doesn't matter if you're a brave elf or not. You got to know, well, yeah, this is scary.
Right. So, anyways, continuing on with that, as the armies start marching out of Cirith Ungol, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum start climbing the stairs to the tunnel. While this is going on, Pippin goes on a secret mission with Gandalf and lights the beacon. And this starts a chain reaction where a whole bunch of beacons get lit across Middle-earth until it reaches Rohan. And that's where Aragorn spots it and runs and tells Theoden the beacons are lit. And of course, Theoden, who was kind of hesitant at first to help Gondor, decides, okay, we're going to help these guys.
Yeah.
And
well, he's honor bound. All right. Let's say this: when the king of Gondor gave that part of Gondor to the Rohirrim, and they called it Rohan.
Yes,
they're like vassals. All right. Now, vassal means you rule your kingdom, but when the big kingdom, Gondor, goes to war, you go to war.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And what normally happens if the vassal, in this case Rohan, is under attack, normally the big kingdom that's in charge, that you're vassal to, is supposed to also come to your aid. But we know the situation didn't happen that way because Gondor is too busy fighting and holding off on their own. They can't help Rohan. It's not that they don't want to. They don't have the men to do it.
Exactly.
Now that Rohan is defeated Saruman and they got a little reprieve, they have a choice. Even though they're honor bound, there's this pact that they make. Every king to king is supposed to make this pact that the king of Rohan swears loyalty to the king of Gondor. All right. Now that hasn't happened because guess what? Don't have a king, right? In Gondor.
Yes.
But technically that pact is still in place. Now that Rohan doesn't have to deal with Isengard anymore, they're freed up. Now, in this situation, Theoden has a choice. I can ride my troops and help Gondor defeat Sauron there, or I can stay here, let Gondor get defeated, and then what's going to happen to Rohan?
Rohan would ultimately fall if they.
There you go. So really, the choice is simple. It's better that he take him and his men and go fight that battle with the Gondor than it is to sit back, not do anything, let Gondor fall, and have absolutely no chance against Mordor.
Exactly.
So he makes the right decision. I think it was his only decision. So even though it was nice that he's decided to do it, he really has no choice but to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And of course, in the midst of all of this, Mary also offers his service to Theoden, saying, "You need people that can fight. I have a sword. Let me fight with you." And of course, Theoden is gracious enough to accept that. So we then see Frodo, Sam, and Gollum are continuing to climb, but Gollum is starting to work his poison into Frodo, because already Sam had a confrontation with Gollum saying, if anything happens to Frodo, you're going to answer to me. And now Gollum decides, okay, time to take care of this guy. So first thing he does is to start making Frodo doubt Sam, planting the idea in his mind that, that Sam wants to try and take the ring, which of course we know Sam doesn't, but Frodo is so susceptible to influence at this point that Gollum, it's almost child's play to him, would you say? To basically corrupt Frodo away from Sam. So, hold on one second here. So yeah, basically, while this is going on, of course, Pippin is getting sworn in on being part of Denethor's men, and we also see that scene of Denethor confronting Faramir about losing Osgiliath, which, yeah, that happened. And that leads to basically Faramir saying, okay, if you really want me to do something that you want, fine. I'll go take Osgiliath again for you. And he says, just do me a favor and think better of me when I return. And Faramir basically says that'll depend on the manner of your return.
It's cold-hearted. I would
Very
say
cold-hearted.
identical cold-heartedness even in a book.
Mm-hmm.
Look, as a parent, you want to say you love all your children the same.
Yeah.
It's not the case. Okay? You love your children as individuals. If you, for example, I have 3 daughters. I don't love them the same. I love my oldest in a certain way. I love my middle in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my youngest in a certain way. They're different.
Because they're each individuals that have
Right.
their own individual personality.
And in some things, some ways, it's just logical. It happens. You might I won't say love. You get along better with one, maybe 2.
Mm-hmm.
Third one you do get along with, but for whatever reason might gravitate more to the mother. Okay.
Right.
And that's nothing wrong with that. Even you have 2 best friends, you don't like them the same way. Okay. Everybody is a different, unique individual. Everything isn't cookie cutter. You're the same.
Mm-hmm.
So Denethor loves his oldest son, doesn't love his youngest son the same. Gandalf has to take a little bit of blame for that, intended or not. Resentment because he felt that his wife died at early age because of Faramir being born. All right. Now, she didn't die, I don't think, at childbirth. I think she died a couple of years afterwards, but he still blames her. Her. So that's a little bit unfair, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So And let's be also pointing out, Denethor ain't right in the head. That
No, he's not.
that Palantir that he used it too many times, and even though he has a strong will to resist it, give it to him, but he has overused it. Okay,
He has.
and it has also played a part. You know, I always will say that he always wanted his son to get the ring, even if he was at a point in time with a clear head. I still think he wants the ring, not because of anything else, but it's going to keep him there as the steward of Gondor. Boromir was willing to do it, and Faramir, let's just say he might love his father, but he ain't going to hand him the ultimate evil on that
No,
ring.
won't.
So, what can we say, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sad. It's happened. I mean, think about this. Even in our own American history, we had a civil war. A revolution war was also pretty much a civil war, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So we have had and did have circumstances where it was not unheard of. Brother against brother, father against son, so forth and so forth.
Right.
Uh, you know, things happen. There's nothing you can do other than what you are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Faramir does not say, okay, my father is so bad and so evil and so ultimate. He doesn't do none of that. He
Right.
just keeps
Why would
doing
he?
what he's supposed to do as a good son, even though he may not agree with it. He still does it.
Yeah.
Okay. So give him props for that. And I still think Faramir does love his father. Denethor didn't realize it until he was near his death. I
Exactly.
want to say maybe that's where he got the clear mind, where the Palantir, part that had clouded his judgment. So in the end, I think it's somewhat atonement, but not much, but there's only
Right.
very few precious moments. But it's kind
So,
of hard,
real quick,
Kinda
I
hard.
want to read this from Virginia. Virginia says, to love each child the same is a disservice, as they each have their skills and traits that make them their best. To love each one based on one's skills lessens the ability to strengthen other weaknesses.
I can agree with that. I mean, I always say you may have a person that's good in math,
Yeah.
right? Excels in math. Probably one of the best mathematicians in your school when you went to school.
Mm-hmm.
But couldn't do anything in science and couldn't do anything in social studies, couldn't do anything in gym. Totally worthless.
Right.
Is it fair to judge him that way? Hey, he's good in math. Give it to him. Not everybody can be perfect in everything. A great
Exactly.
person in social studies probably isn't going to be good in science and isn't going to be good in math.
Mm-hmm.
We tend, even in our society today, this is how you should be. You should be good in math. You should be good in science, social studies, English, if they still have it.
Oh, they do.
This is what you're supposed to be good at. But if somebody's an A plus in one, but C pluses in the other, and they kind of get resentment, people give them resentment for it. Boromir, like I said, is not a great warrior. He's not what you would put up there as an A plus warrior, but he's a good warrior in his own right. He's not a scrub, but he's a good warrior. But he's not a Boromir. But then again,
Exactly.
Boromir doesn't have the thought and the thinking power of a Faramir.
Mm-hmm. Like here's a good example: Vilcus and Farkas from Skyrim. One's the more thoughtful brother. One's the more action-oriented brother.
No. If you ever notice, sometimes when it comes to siblings, sometimes if they're close or if they're twins, but if they're really close, one is strong in one area
Mm-hmm.
while the other one is strong in another area. Separately, you would say inefficient in some ways, but when you have them together, they're
Yeah,
a perfect whole almost in a sense.
exactly. Which, and we don't have to get into this right now because we're kind of drawn to a close here. But that would be an interesting thought experiment. What if both Boromir and Faramir went to Rivendell? But like I said, that's a conversation for another time. So while this is continuing, again, we see Frodo and Sam and Gollum. They're taking a rest on top of a ledge. They're not all the way up the stairs yet, but Gollum wakes up first and decides to steal the elvish bread and drop it off the cliff, but leave a few crumbs on Sam's shoulder, basically trying to frame him as if Sam had been eating the bread, being greedy. And his plan ultimately works. He manages to get Frodo to kick Sam out of the party.
You remember when I told you Denethor is a little off center?
Yes.
I think at this point in time, it's safe to say Frodo is off centered.
Oh, you can tell just by looking at him.
Now, Smeagol, Gollum, you can already see he's working out a plan. People tend to think that Smeagol Gollum is stupid. He's not stupid.
No.
And he knows what his plan is. In order to bring back, he wants the spider to kill
Shelob.
Frodo.
Yes.
Okay. And then he will go back and get the ring. But you have to remember, he already has an agreement with her. He'll bring her things to eat.
Mm-hmm.
That's not in the movie, that's in the book. So he already has a plan. If I get him up there, I can get her to do my dirty work. But you notice in the plan, in order for him to do all that, he's got to get rid of who?
Sam.
So Sam has to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you already have this, Sam is with Frodo, but on a whim, Frodo can tell him, go away, go home, go.
Exactly.
So he has already snapped at him. He has already said some things that you would, okay, maybe other people will say, screw you, I am going home.
Mm-hmm. But Sam's too loyal for that.
Yeah. So, and he also knows it ain't him, it's the ring. So,
yeah.
Smeagol got to get rid of him. And the only way to get rid of him is he already knows that Sam doesn't trust him. Even when he should have been trusting him, but he was attempting to be good, Sam never trusted him.
Right.
So he knows that Frodo knows that Sam wants him gone. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make it look like he's going to blame me for something. And you remember how he does the trick. He tells him, the fat one's going to ask you for that ring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's a marvelous thing that he does that, because what does eventually happen? He sees him, and he sees that he's getting tired, weak. He's not thinking on all cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
And what does Sam say? Well,
let me carry the ring for a while.
I'll carry it for you for a little bit. And that was right there was enough to, there you go. And you see the big smile on Smeagol's face.
Yep.
He achieved what he achieved. I think he was even surprised how easy it was to get Frodo to get rid of Sam.
Exactly.
So
And here's something else, another layer to this too. And I don't even think, and I'm not even sure Gollum really figured into this one as to how easy the plan worked. Remember, Frodo had someone try and forcibly take the ring from him once before with Boromir. So I'm sure maybe a little bit of that might have been playing in his mind too.
well, I don't think that even as a person, you don't want to get bullied. And
Yeah.
since he's a small little thing, and Boromir pretty much manhandled him, so to speak,
Yes.
he didn't like that. Uh, I think in Frodo's mind, he's realizing this is what I'm guessing in his mind. Everybody wants to come take it from him, which he should have
Right.
realized that from day one when he left Rivendell. Everybody will eventually try to take it from him. The only person that's two people that I seen, well, maybe three, well, maybe four: Gandalf,
Gandalf wouldn't.
Aragorn,
Yeah.
Gimli, and Legolas.
Right.
Pretty much outside the hobbits, they're it. So
Real quick, Sam's strength was in his loyalty and purity of heart. Gollum exploited that and Frodo's weakness due to the corruption he was experiencing because of the ring.
well, that's true. And I know a lot of people say the true hero in all this is Sam. And I can see that point. But I will tell you, circumstances played a lot of that. By all rights, Sam shouldn't even be there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget, the only reason he started to be there was because he was eavesdropping on Frodo and Gandalf.
Yeah, and
So
Gandalf
it
basically
isn't, I won't say a dedicated hero. I would say a hero that just happened to be there.
a reluctant hero
Yeah,
almost.
that kind of reluctant. Yeah, I'll give you that. But you know, Sam is a good counterbalance, but Sam doesn't have the ring. Sam doesn't have to. I mean, he sees what's happening with the ring, but
Mm-hmm.
he's not really dealing with that. What he's
Right.
dealing with is helping Frodo, helping him by trying to, make sure he's fed, that he tries to get some rest, and also the extra burden, keeping an eye out because of Gollum.
Right. Although I do want to bring up one thing that I know the movies don't show. Even the extended edition doesn't show this. There is a brief moment of time where, yes, while Sam has the ring as he's trying to rescue Frodo after he got by Shelob, Sam does briefly have that moment of, I could keep this ring for myself, but then ultimately decides, no, that's not me.
I think because he's seen so much of what's the ring done to Frodo, that
Yeah,
he has that sense in the back of his mind. There ain't nothing good with this ring. Notice
exactly.
he does not put it on. He might wore it around his neck,
Uh-huh.
but he could have just as easy slipped it onto his finger. He does not do that. He
Right.
does not do that.
Now,
So
real quick, before we move on to the last scene I want to talk about, Virginia had messaged me a question to ask you that kind of ties into this. And she asks this: why was Bilbo using the ring in The Hobbit not as devastating as Frodo using it? Like, he used it and walked all the way back to his Hobbit hole, but Frodo accidentally used it for a few seconds because he caught it in Bree and he could see Sauron.
I will give you a couple reasons why that's the case. First, hobbits, let's just leave it to Frodo and Sam, and we can put Bobo there,
Uh-huh.
have a natural resistance to the power of the ring. Gandalf even says that. Second of all, even with Sauron and Dumbledore, Bilbo's nowhere near Sauron. Nowhere near. He's not trying to travel the door. He's not
Mm-hmm.
trying to do none of that. If you notice, he's on the edge of the map. He's going from Hobbiton to
Erebor.
under the mountain, and then
Mm-hmm.
he's going from under the mountain back to Hobbiton.
Right.
Now, the White Council drives Sauron all the way back to Mordor, which further pushed his power away from the ring. Think of it this way: the closer the ring is to Sauron, the more powerful the pull is to him. The second thing is, notice where Frodo's going. He's going right into Mordor. He's going right where Sauron is. And as he's getting closer, that ring is calling to Sauron. It is Sauron. The ring and Sauron are one. They're the same. Only one's in the essence of the ring and the other essence of his embodiment. But they are one.
Real quick,
Go ahead.
Resolute Rebellion said, by the time Frodo had taken possession of the ring, Sauron had gathered more strength. And another thing too, Virginia also responded that I read her question wrong, basically. She was specifically talking about the scene in Fellowship where Bilbo puts it on and disappears and walks back to his house after the party, seemingly with no issue. And yes, at first glance, that seems to be the case. But, Virginia, I would argue there was a little bit of an issue. Because what does Bilbo do like 5 minutes later? Basically almost go full Gollum mode when Gandalf suggests, you should leave the ring behind.
Well, even at that point, Gandalf doesn't know what the ring is. Because you have to remember, according to what Gandalf believes, and what a lot of people don't know, in the process of making rings, even the ones for the elves, the elves Sauron doesn't even know about, them three. He just found out that the elves made rings and he got upset. But the ones for men, the ones for dwarves, and the one that he got, he had to forge more rings to, as practice. Okay? Call them lesser rings. Okay?
Yes.
And Gandalf talks about these lesser rings. And he believes what Bilbo finds isn't the ring, but one of these lesser rings. And these lesser rings might have lesser power, might for all sake and purpose make you invisible.
So put it another way, like in Harry Potter, there's more than one invisibility cloak, but there's only one invisibility cloak that's one of the Deathly Hallows.
Well, I'll give it to you better. Just think of any person creating something. There's always a bunch of failures before he gets the master done right?
Prototypes, yes.
Yeah, there's a bunch of, we call them prototypes now. Well, think of this. Gandalf thinks he got a prototype ring. One of these lesser rings that aren't as powerful as the rest of the rings. But come to find out, later on, he finds out, no, he got the ring. But you have to remember, Bilbo, this is ignorance. Bilbo doesn't know anything about that.
Right.
So his innocence to what power he got is also a protection for Bilbo. Does it corrupt him? Well, when you see it in the movie and he goes after Frodo for the ring back, you see how evil he could be. And even when when Gandalf confronts him, he gets a little fisticuffs going there that he's trying to steal his ring.
That's kind of what Resolute Rebellion is saying here. He says by the time of the Fellowship, Bilbo had lived a long life, way longer than normal. And as they pointed out, he was, quote, stretched and thinned in his will and weakness for the ring.
Well, look at it this way. Gollum had, 500-600 years with the ring? It extended his life that much. I think if Bilbo would have kept the ring, probably would have kept him alive for another 100-200 years more.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, up until the ring decides to leave him. But you have to remember, The ring is people give it like it has thought, but it doesn't really have thought. But the ring, it can be happy where it's at for the moment until the time's right to move along.
It's
It
fickle.
stayed with Smeagol or Gollum for 500 years before it decided to slip off his finger.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, when you see the movie, when it shows Isidore keeping the ring and then it betraying him and dropping out of his hand, that's not 100 or 200 years. That's maybe 40, 30 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The ring was content being in a dark place with Gollum. Okay. Gollum could any of them for 600 years could have took that ring if that ring had the influence on him and took it right down to Dogador and give it to Sauron.
And everyone would have been screwed if that had
But
happened.
what was there to stop him? Nothing. So the ring, if the ring has any type of conscience, it has patience. It has time on its side. It ain't limited to, oh, this person only got 50 years to live. No, the ring has patience. It knows when to leave and when to go. Most of the time, if you ever see when the ring's power to be noticed, is when later on when the Nazgul are around.
Right.
That's when the ring uses its power. Or as Frodo's moving closer to Mordor, the ring's showing its power, wanting to go. Especially when he's at Minas Morgul, as we told. When he's up there, instead of going up the stairs, he starts heading right into the door.
Exactly.
Yep. So if the ring has any type of power or consciousness, it knows when it's time to go to the next best thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Bobo had a natural resistance, which Frodo has, but like Resolute said, by the time Frodo has the ring, Sauron's even that much stronger, which means as you're bringing that ring closer, it's getting more and more powerful. And,
Right.
and a little hint there is when you see that when Sam goes to rescue Frodo from that tower, and you see Frodo without the shirt, you see how it dug the ring had used the chain and dug into his neck and into his flesh.
Oh yeah.
So that's it. But Bobo had a natural resistance, almost innocence. The only way I can compare it is, say you go into a dead relative's house and you get a ring. And you see the ring and you might say, well, it's a cheap ring. It's nothing. And then you later on come to find out that ring is worth $100,000, right? There you go.
Well, I think with that point, Phil, we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close. We didn't get quite as far as I wanted to, but we still got the vast majority of it. So we're going to go ahead and stop it here. So next Monday, we'll go ahead and pick it up with part 3, and that'll basically be Denethor's sloppy lunch, we'll call it.
I like that scene. Even though that tomato was
I do
juicy.
not.
I like him. Hey. I like the character Denethor. I don't think he's bad or good. I just think he's just a typical character.
I'm going to bring this up. I'm just going to mention this, then we're going to end it. I also like the character of Denethor, but I did not like that scene. And I'll explain why when we get to next time.
He didn't like a squirty tomato that popped in his mouth. I got you.
No, I didn't. All right. Anyways, thank you. Actually, hold on real quick, Phil. I just realized something. Virginia just messaged me. Monday actually will not work. So let's move it to Wednesday of next week. Okay. Can we do that?
The second?
The first.
The first. Okay, we can aim for that.
All right. So we'll say Wednesday the 1st at 9:00 is when part 3 will be. And in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to forego the outro video this time. We will talk to you later.
Cookies.